Welcome to my 4-star books. So, I read a lot of books, and honestly, some of these, I have to split into parts because, like for the 1 stars, I don't have that many, so I could make it into one video. I hate doing part 2s and 3s of videos, especially watching TikToks. You get really old with that. But I am doing that again because my 3 stars were quite long, and so I think I split that only into 2 videos. This is gonna be split into 3 because we have a lot. And I'm trying to keep most of these super brief, of a brief synopsis, and then you can go find the full reviews if you want more about a particular book. But 4-star is my norm. And if you've been on TikTok, that's hilarious. Because if you haven't looked it up, there is book drama because of a 4-star review from a book. And this debut author hadn't even released her book yet, and her career has now just gone up in flames, and you're like, I was a little bummed when I saw a 3-star, but I didn't attack them, I just kind of internalized that, but dude, don't go to the internet. No, it was bad. It's fun to watch, though, to just watch fire everywhere around her career. She got dropped by her publishing company that she paid money for, which was oh no. It's a magical ride. If you need just a little petty in your life, go watch what happened. It was a journey. But anyways, it's funny because this is my 4-star book, so I think that's my most common, and that's not a bad rating. It just means it wasn't wow, this is life-changing, oh my god. It was just a really good book. And anyways, here we are, part 1 of my 4-star books. For the most part, these are in order that I posted on the channel, but some of these did get a little discombobulated, just so we're aware. So, number 1 is Cord Magic. So, this is a great resource if you are looking into any kind of cord magic, but the thing that I didn't love about this is the only technique was to twist them together. I could never get it to work. I tried it so many times. I'm like, how is twisting yarn gonna work? Unless you disassemble it and reassemble it, maybe. But otherwise, I don't know why the author didn't include braiding instead of twisting, unless that's what they meant, but I don't think so. I think they meant just twisting it together. It never worked for me. I don't know why it was the only technique too. I feel like there was so much on how fabric is made and a lot of backstory, but then the technique was just one technique the whole time. But other than that, it was a fantastic book. Then we have Ostara. So this was part of the Llewellyn's Sabbat Essentials. Again, a lot of really good information. The Sabbat Essential books, a lot of them were good. Some of them I didn't like the writing of the authors. Some of them just didn't click. This one was pretty good. Only thing I didn't like is that in the ritual section, all 3 were the same thing, basically. So it could be done solitary, with a large group, or with 2 people. That was it. And it was couldn't we have a little diversity here? And it was the same message every time. Ostara can have a lot of different things associated to it, as with all of the holidays, so it was just kind of a bummer that it was just the one the entire time. But again, it was still a pretty good book, and if you're new, it's a fantastic resource. Then we have Practical Magic for Beginners. This is the same author who did the Cord Magic book. This isn't necessarily a must read. It's pretty good. And if you're really into visualizations and affirmations, fantastic for you. But if you're a seasoned witch, you're probably not going to get a lot from this book. But if you're relatively new and just wanting to get a bunch of books and just kind of have that reiteration of the basic concepts, it's a great one to grab. Then we have Priestess of the Morrighan. Obviously, if she is your matron deity, it's a good book to have. Just Stephanie Woodfield is really good on the topic anyways. This book in particular, though, I will say it is really aimed at the priestess part of that, meaning if you are solitary, you're just gonna have a lot of work involved because the rituals and the experiences are really geared towards priestessing. And if that's something that you're interested in, even if she's not your matron, there's a lot of good information in there on the topic. But if you're solitary, it's a lot of work to unpriestess that and make it solitary, because it's really designed for being the facilitator of rituals versus you and your altar, and that's it. And there's no other people and no other concerns. Like, it's a little bit of like, oh, okay, I'm not the intended audience for that one. Like, it's still got really good information. I love Stephanie Woodfield's work. Just one of those where you're like, it's a lot of work if that's not your, you know, if you're not interested in being a priestess, probably not going to get a lot from that book. Unless you're also like, if you work with the Morrighan, you will, but otherwise, probably not. Then we have Witchcraft Therapy. This is one that I was like really hesitant about. And like, there are some things that I don't love about this book. Her verbiage sometimes gets on your nerves because it's a lot of slang, of like modern slang. And like, I don't know, using vibe a little too much and like AF, like, I feel like sometimes people forget that like internet slang and like book slang don't crisscross terribly often. Like, vibe kind of, because you're like, like your vibe's kind of off. But like, unless you're using it ironically, most of the time people aren't actively saying AF, like just those letters. Other than that though, oh, I have an alarm. I don't know why I have an alarm. Why do I have an alarm? Oh, because I was doing steps. That's how long I was supposed to be walking, but then I hit my step goal for the time being, so I stopped. Anyways, back to the whole entire point. So, working with the book at the time that I was reading it, I was really pleasantly surprised. Like, there was so much in there that was actually really helpful and like kind of intriguing and went a little deeper than like the one that I just barely talked about, like the, what was it, like Light Magic Through Dark Times book. The Witchcraft Therapy book was a little bit better than that by like a bit. And so like, is it like gonna be life-changing? No, but it's definitely a great resource if you want to have a little bit of like witchcraft therapy. Then we have The Casting of Spells. It was one from Penczak that's relatively small in comparison to some of his other works. And like the formatting's a little different because it's not through Llewellyn. I think it's a self-publishing house, but regardless, like it's fine. It just doesn't quite have the same feel as his other books, and I think that's just some of Llewellyn's like input. But it's a great resource, especially if you're not sure how to do spells. Because so many times, like, beginners will flock to the advanced and be like, but like, how do you do a spell? This is a good book to be like, read this. This explains how to cast a spell. It goes over all the stuff you could ever probably need on that exact specific topic. Then we have Goddesses in the Details. I really just love any Deborah Blake book, to be honest. It's a great resource. It's all about, again, putting goddess in the details. It's putting magic into the little things that you're already doing. It's just, any of her work is good. Just go buy all of Deborah Blake's. Was it the most life-changing? No, but it's still good. That book and the, what was it, like Everyday Witch, whatever, her other book that's like the sequel to this one, those two I have flipped to often to find spells. They do work. I've done a few of her spells. They work fantastically. Highly recommend. She's fantastic. Also follow her on social media. She posts about her cats and her shenanigans, and it's fantastic. Then we have Everyday Sun Magic, and this is one of those books. I'm not going to read my review that I had before, but this is the thing. When you read a witchcraft book, I feel like the big point is how often, well after you've read that book, would you go back to it? Because, like, there are so many, I have a bookshelf full, I've rented plenty from the library at this point. There's only so many that I will actively go back to find information again. This is one of those books. Like, specifically, the thing that really stands out is the, like, different phases of the sun, if you wanted to work with that. It is something I'm, like, contemplating, but, like, I don't know when I will, because, like, I don't like gendering the moon and the sun. Just like, I don't really gender the elements anymore. Like, I know the typical associations, but I just don't. Like, I think it's kind of stupid. We have all of them all over the place. They don't need a gender. There's just a lot of the craft that I feel like we could just remove gender and be fine. And the moon and the sun, I feel like, are kind of similar. The moon affects people whether you are a man or a woman. Just because your cycle tends to link up to the moon, it's going to affect people. Even today, me and my husband were talking about how he's like, I've been like so moody today. I'm like, well, it's the full moon, so that's probably why. Oh, yeah, probably. So like, It affects people all the time. Ask anybody who has worked in medical or law enforcement. Chaos ensues around the full moon. And probably the new moon. I noticed there was some wackadoo stuff going on around that time too. Just like a different variation of it though. But anyways, the sun book I have gone back to because there's also affirmations throughout this like zodiacs, which I think you're supposed to use for your zodiac, but I think they'd be great to use as you enter into that season and throughout that season. Like, again, Dorothy Morrison's book, The Craft, was so good. I was like, oh my god, you wrote those other books. They are actually pretty good. So, like, I have a newer appreciation for them, but I've gone back to them multiple times. So, like, that's a good sign of a book. Then we have The Witch's Broom by Deborah Blake. The only thing is that, like, when she tells you to, like, she has so much information in there. Like, truly, I am so impressed as somebody who creates content, books, and video content, that she was able to write that big of a book on one tool. That takes skill. But also, I was a little bummed that it felt like you constantly had to have so many different brooms and not repurposing your broom as you go. That was my only thing where I was like, I don't know how many brooms I want hanging around my house, to be honest. Like, there's gotta be a limit. Like, even if it's just seasonal, like, and then you burn it, and then you move on to the next one or something. But no, I just feel like you're making brooms left and right. Then we have Silver Spells. Some of hers were good, some of them were a little questionable. It's kind of what you get with Silver Ravenwolf. It was her 3 older books that were smooshed into one, and you can definitely tell because, like, sometimes the formatting of, like, how she wrote them changed. But overall, like, I still love a Silver Ravenwolf spell every once in a while. It's good to have in case I need it, because she has a spell for, like, I swear, just about everything that you could ever need. Then we have The Witch's Heart by Christopher Penczak. His series that he did, I think it was only the 3, but it was magic for money, love, and for protection. His books are so good. So that one in particular, The Witch's Heart, is obviously love magic. And it is so good because it talks about all of the inner work you need to do before you're going and finding somebody else. And especially, like, it's not necessarily like the message of like you have to love yourself before you can find somebody, but it's also like if you're really desperate and like needing spells to find a person, maybe we need to do some inner work to make you ready to bring somebody in. Like, the way he handles it is just so good because love spells can be such a bad side of witchcraft. Then we have Truth About Herb Magic by Scott Cunningham. It's a really tiny book. It's like 40 pages. But like, he packed a punch with that one, and it's just one of those that, like, if you're interested in herbs magic and like you just want like a little brief, like sweet little introduction, this is such a good pamphlet. Just be like, here you go, read this. You're good to go. It's gonna be great for you. Then we have The Witching Hour by Silver Ravenwolf. This was nice because so many books are aimed at beginners, and this finally felt like an intermediate. Maybe not quite advanced, but definitely not a beginner. Like, you were expected to know some stuff before you jumped into it, and I love that. Then we have Spell Crafts by Scott Cunningham, and truly the emphasis is on crafts because it was a lot of crafting involved. And like, it did give off the same vibes as like The Magical Household. It wasn't my favorite of his. And like, it definitely had a lot more of like, oh, but around the world they do this and they do this and they do this and they do this. It's like, that's cool, I guess, but it feels random at a lot of points. So, I mean, it's not bad. It just, I don't know how much crafting I want to be doing on my craft anyways. Then we have Cunningham's Book of Shadows. Again, it was, looking at it now, it's still a good resource, especially if you aren't, like, you don't know how to, like, set up a Book of Shadows. It has a lot of information, but it's also just mostly a collection of his old works and, like, probably an older style of witchcraft than kind of where he ended up. But again, it's still a good book to have, and it kind of condenses a lot of his work into one. Then we have the Asatru book. I don't remember, my notes were not great. I changed it halfway through making my mega list. And anyways, so this just says Asatru in the author's name that I don't know how to pronounce. It was a good introduction, but it didn't give a lot of how to do it. Like, now go try this. That didn't exist in this book, so that kind of sucked. And then lastly, as my camera's overheating and inevitably it's gonna have the awkward cut because I'm getting into the 16-minute range, is Everyday Moon Magic. Same thing as before. If you have ever wanted to do anything moon related, this book has it for you. And it, again, like the sun magic one is one that I have gone to multiple times over. which to me is a sign that it is a very good book. So that is going to be it for part 1. Make sure to follow along in the next few days for part 2 and part 3 because I have a lot of books that are in the 4-star range. Huge thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names here on the screen. If you'd like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day. If you would like to check out my fiction work, it is on my website. You can find it linked in the description where you can find my 3 books that I have written. They are fiction. I promise my writing gets better from book 1 to book 3. Just chug along through. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all soon.